This summer, the United States men's national team went through a Gold Cup with largely a B roster, maybe B minus, with a couple of A players that are going to make the World Cup roster in that starting 11. However, what we learned from not having our starters in was just as valuable. Learned about our depth or lack thereof from that B roster. And ultimately, it's going to give us a little bit of clarity when it comes to who is going to be on that back half of the 2026 World Cup roster. And what I mean by that is largely the last 8 to 10 players that make that roster are undecided. The first 15, maybe 16, 17 players pretty much pick themselves. Our starting 11 is fairly clear, and a couple of the backups, a couple of the subs are very obvious because we have positions like our starting forward. We have two good options in Fuller and Balogun and Ricardo Pepi. Our midfield is absolutely stacked with talent and depth. So again, that starting 11 is pretty solid. The next 4, 5, 6 positions, they're not really up for debate. Those players are going. It's just a matter of who's going to play in what matchup and how many minutes everybody's going to get. When we look to the last 8 players in, and realistically even further to the last 4, that's where there's a lot of room for transition and a lot of room for debate in terms of who's going to be on that roster. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the last 4 in and the first 4 out of the 2026 World Cup roster, March Madness style. Because I do believe that while it's not always going to be a one-to-one comparison for who comes in, who comes out, it could be a situation where we look at where do we need more depth and who can we sacrifice. But ultimately, we need to know who's going to be those last couple of players in and can we rely on them to produce if called upon. Ideally, the last 4 players don't see the field much. Sometimes they're called in just to be a leader, just to have that eyes and vibes kind of feel and get the group going because they've been there before and they can help some of the young kids along. After 2022, I personally thought this was going to be largely Tim Ream's role as that last 4 in leader guy who can help steady the troops and right the ship if something were to go wrong. However, nobody has taken his spot, and in the Gold Cup this summer, he looked really comfortable and effective next to Chris Richards. He wasn't perfect. His legs may leave him in the next 9 to 10 months, who knows, but right now he's avoiding that. He is exceeding expectations in terms of his longevity, and from a St. Louis perspective, I'm thrilled to see it. From a U.S. men's national team perspective, he is, nearing legend status in terms of his longevity and ability as one of our center backs. So I'm really hopeful that we continue to see him because I do like the pairing of Richards and Ream, even though my favorite pairing and what I want to see involves Mark McKenzie. So, with that being said, with examples set, let's get into it and let's talk about who are going to be our last 4 players in and who are going to be our last 4 players out of the 2026 World Cup roster. If you're new here, welcome to the T26 channel, where we talk about all things related to the U.S. men's national team and are working on getting ready for the 2026 World Cup. We're going to start this video on a positive note and talk about our last 4 players in the roster. I think that that's a better way for us to start, as the summer didn't quite go as planned with 2 disastrous friendlies and a mediocre Gold Cup. So to start us off with our last 4 in the roster, we have Josh Sargent. And Josh is barely squeaking his way into this roster, and I'll tell you why. As we saw over the summer, Mauricio Pochettino elected to go in a new direction and bring Patrick Agyemang and Damian Downs into the Gold Cup instead of Josh Sargent. And while this was a shock to most of us, as we thought he deserved another look and could show his potential against some of these smaller nations, gain some confidence and work his way back in, Mauricio Pochettino decided that he didn't want to see that. And I think a lot of us were hoping that Sargent would take advantage of this time, get a club move worked out, and he was so very close to making a move to Wolfsburg, but he put the brakes on it himself. And while I don't agree with this, I think he needs to take that step to a top 5 league, and Germany and Wolfsburg as a club would have been a good move for him professionally. He wanted to stay where he is. While I, again, don't agree with that and I wish he would have made the move, I think that this is going to give him another year of confidence in the championship if he stays with Norwich. I don't want to see him move to a relegation side in the Premier League. That's going to absolutely take him out of the roster. But if he can stay with Norwich and produce at the clip that he has for the last 2 seasons, I think he makes his way in. I think that Damian Downs is going to take a little bit of time to settle in at his new role in Southampton, and Patrick Agyemang is going to be with Derby County, who's probably fighting for relegation in the Championship. And we've seen Patrick Agyemang struggle when the level goes up just a bit. He's made a move to the Championship where the league is deeper, and he wasn't dominating MLS. And while Mauricio Pochettino has shown him favor for now, I think that being on a level playing field with Downs and Patrick Agyemang is a good thing for Sargent. It's going to show that week in and week out, he's playing the same competition and dominating them rather than maybe eking out a couple of goals here and there and trying to produce. So on that note, Josh Sargent is the last striker into the roster. I think that if he gets a move to a top 5 league and it's anybody but a relegation battle, Leeds or Burnley, he makes his way in as well. But this level competition that he's going to be going against, it's going to be a good thing for him. It's not the best in terms of career, it's not the prettiest, but it is going to edge him along in my opinion. Next on our list is Sebastian Berhalter. And as I said in the beginning, our midfield is absolutely stacked with depth, but I think that Berhalter showed that he has value to Mauricio Pochettino over the summer. He's good on set pieces, he has a great delivery, he's versatile enough to play in the middle or out on the wing, even though it's not his best position and he's not playing that at the highest level. And he's also not afraid of getting into the fight, which we know Mauricio Pochettino values. He has that fire. He has the desire to, go get stuck in and then let somebody know. He's like Tyler Adams in that, with that same mentality. So I think that he proved himself very valuable. And while maybe I don't expect him to get a lot of minutes next summer, I think that he proved that he deserves another look, and he could be that last guy off the bench if we need to start delivering really good set pieces. So for that reason, I think he makes our roster next summer. He needs to finish this year strong in MLS and either have a good start to the season with his current club or get a loan move over to Europe and pick right back up so he can continue to get good game minutes and be ready for the World Cup. If he produces all along the way, I think he has a shot. Third on our list of the last 4 players in is a name that I was hoping we were done with after the 2022 World Cup, and that is Walker Zimmerman. Ultimately, I don't think he really belongs with the U.S. men's national team anymore, but Mauricio Pochettino clearly values him above guys like Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty, who I think deserve a look. But when Walker Zimmerman was called in over the summer, he actually jumped Miles Robinson and got more minutes during the Gold Cup. While I don't think he should be playing any role, I wouldn't expect him to play very much of a role if he is called upon. But during the Gold Cup, we did see the situation where he could be very valuable to us. And that is where we're trying to hold on to a lead and we want to dominate in the air. And we're not asking him to do anything except play it out. During the Gold Cup, Pochettino elected to bring Zimmerman on over Miles Robinson when we needed to protect a lead. That's the exact situation where he will get time come 2026. I think that he's jumped Miles in this roster selection because if we look at the depth at the center back position, we have Chris Richards, Tim Ream, and Mark McKenzie. There's 3 right off the bat that I'm going to say are locks to come into 2026. Pochettino didn't want to use Miles Robinson in any game. He didn't start. He didn't get any minutes. But when we needed a sub, he still went to Zimmerman. I think that the additional value of an aerial threat or aerial protection is what's going to set him apart here and get him into the roster. The last player on our list to get into the 2026 World Cup roster is Tanner Tessman. Tanner was not invited into camp this summer, and we know he's a little ways down the depth chart when it comes to the midfield behind Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardoso, Weston McKennie, Malik Tillman, Yunus Musa even. And with coming into the Gold Cup, I already said that Berhalter is going to be in. I think that there's still a spot for Tanner Tessman, but he has to have another good season in France to do so. He started to catch form. He started to be utilized a little bit more appropriately in the second half of his club season, and if that continues, he's got a place. We know that Pochettino values and likes Tessman because he gave him a shout-out after the semifinal Nations League matches against Jamaica. So he's in Pochettino's head, but he wasn't called in this summer. That could be due to personal reasons, but I think that the only player that really played themselves into the roster was Sebastian Berhalter. Tanner Tessman, to me, still has value and still has a spot in this 2026 roster if he has a good club season. I'm not saying that he's jumping Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardoso, Weston McKennie, anybody like that, but I think that he is a good depth piece, and he is also versatile enough to slot back in and be a center back for us if he's called upon. His defensive reading of the game is that good, and he can fill in, and maybe we fill out a back five at some point. All of those things combined, Pochettino's liking him, his versatility, and his potential to have a strong season in France, that gets him into this roster. All right, now that we've talked about the players who are in, let's talk about the players who I believe are out. And we are going to start with Patrick Agyemang. He played what felt like every single minute of the Gold Cup, and he scored 2 goals. One was really his, one wasn't, but was ultimately unimpressive for the entire summer. He showed that he's wasteful, no matter how good his movement might be, no matter what his physical attributes might look like. He was getting knocked off the ball, and he was failing to finish good open chances that a more high-quality striker like Pepe, Balogun, Sargent, even Haji Wright would finish. So I believe that while we got to look at him and he got to move, I think he played himself out of consideration for the World Cup roster. This move, I don't think it's going to be the best decision for him either, because he's going to have to work his way into Derby County. He's recovering from a hernia surgery, and the championship is no joke. It's a very physical league. It's a very demanding league. There's a lot of matches to be played. And if he doesn't produce immediately, the fans and the staff, they're going to turn on him, and he's not going to be let back into that 11. He's been able to get away with mediocrity in Charlotte. He's not going to be given that opportunity in Derby. He's going to have to produce immediately, and I just don't see that for him. I don't think he has the quality to be there quite yet. I wish him all the best. I want him to succeed. If he's scoring goals, come on in. But right now, I just don't see it. And with the competition against Downs and Sargent in the championship, we're going to get a 1-to-1 comparison. I don't think he tops that list. Next up for us is going to be our little Brendan. And unfortunately, I think he's out. We've seen that our winger depth is still not great, but Mauricio Pochettino valued a player like Diego Luna on the left more than he did Brendan Aronson all summer long. Brendan came in as a sub and scored a goal against Trinidad and Tobago, but he failed to see more minutes the rest of the summer. And I think that even though our depth is thin and Brendan is versatile enough to maybe play as a pressing 10, as a late sub, I don't think Pochettino's going to use him. He didn't use him in that fashion against any of the teams that we played over the summer. He's moving up to the Premier League with Leeds. It doesn't look like he's getting a move right now, and I think he's going to be on his heels all season long. The last time he was in the Premier League, he got out-battled physically and was on his butt what felt like 90% of the time. Maybe he's gotten a little bit stronger. Maybe his balance is a little bit better, and it's going to be 80% of the time. That's still not a good thing. And he's going to be defending most of the time with Leeds. And unfortunately, I think that they're a relegation battle side, so he's not going to be able to showcase what offensive capabilities he has. Yes, he's a very good presser. Yes, he has a great engine, and that has value. But I don't think that's what Pochettino's looking for at this point. So unfortunately, our little Brendan is one of the first 4 out. Third on our list for the first 4 out is Miles Robinson. And this is exactly a 1-for-1, just kind of like Josh Sargent for Patrick Agyemang. Damian Downs is also in that conversation. This is 1-for-1 with Walker Zimmerman. And we saw that Pochettino values what Walker Zimmerman can do over what Miles Robinson can bring to the table. I think that their on-the-ball abilities are similar enough that their defensive capabilities is going to be what tips the scale. And while Miles maybe has a little bit better recovery speed than Walker Zimmerman does, neither one of them is going to be playing against fresh legs. They're going to be the late center back sub who's there to help defend a lead, and maybe they're getting run at, maybe there's crosses coming in, but they should be sitting deep enough in that situation anyways where pace is not the deciding factor. If I want somebody defending crosses, I want Walker Zimmerman over Miles Robinson 8 days a week. Unfortunately for Miles, I think that this is really simple. And if either of those two are going, it's Walker. I'm not a huge fan of either of them going in, but if we have to pick, I think it's Walker. And finally, the last of our first four out is Giovanni Reyna. And while Gio is probably one of the highest ceiling talents in our roster and in our player pool, he hasn't shown it. He hasn't had an opportunity to show it with Borussia Dortmund, and we really haven't seen him play at the highest of levels since the 2022 World Cup. Gio's had a bad string of injuries. He's honestly looked disinterested and timid on the field with Dortmund in the minutes that he's gotten, and that has ultimately hurt him a lot. He's got some of the lowest statistics in the Bundesliga when it comes to sprint speed, and we need our players to run. We need to see the fight. We need to see the hustle. He's got the talent, but we've seen a guy who I think has fallen out of love with the game and doesn't want to bring it right now, especially with Dortmund. If he gets this move to Parma, I think he plays his way in. Serie A is a good league for him. Parma is a club that wants the ball and wants a playmaker like Gio Reyna. If he gets that move, I think he's in. However, there seems to be a $3 million discrepancy between what Dortmund want and what Parma is willing to provide. If that move doesn't go through and Gio's stuck at Dortmund, I think he's in a lot of trouble and he's not going to see the field and he's not going to make this roster. If he makes the move to Parma, I think he plays his way in. I think he shows his quality. I don't think he goes right back into the starting lineup, but I think that he shows his quality and he plays his way into the roster and he maybe gets some minutes next summer. Until he gets a move, he's on our first four out list. I'm hoping for more. I want to see him on that roster. I'm a big Gio fan when he's at his best, but we haven't seen that player in a long time and we just can't count on him. All right, guys, that's everything I've got for you today. Let me know what you think. Who are the players that are in that last four in and the first four out? Leave a like and a comment in the comment section down below, and we'll see you next time.